Good afternoon and welcome to ConResnic's webinar. This is a webinar on CMMC, what's ahead and how to prepare. CMMC is the cybersecurity model certificate that we want to talk about. Many companies are talking about CMMC, and DoD issued their proposed rule on December 26th. So this is very relevant for many government contractors. Before we begin, let me talk about a few administrative items. So there's no dial-in number for the webinar. The audio should be streaming through your computer. So please make sure that your computer speakers are turned up. You're going to be seeing all of us on screen, hopefully as well, all of the presenters and myself. If you have any questions, which some of you have already submitted, we really appreciate that. Keep them coming. I'm going to be monitoring those, and this is going to be a conversation with the panelists. So we have questions prepared, but we'd love additional questions. If you haven't been on On24 before, there's an attendee console, and there's a number of application widgets at the bottom of the screen. They're all resizable and movable, so feel free to make us as big as you want or as small as you want. And expand the slides. We won't have a lot of slides here because this is more conversational. CPE, which is continuing professional education, is given. We all just finished the year of our CPE, but we need that every year, many of us. So you have to stay here for 75 minutes. It is a 90-minute webinar, and you have to complete 5 of our 7 poll questions. So they're going to be coming up periodically, and then we'll send you a certificate afterwards. So make sure you hit the submit button. Sometimes people put them large and miss the submit button. Make sure that you scroll down and look for submit, because those polling questions tell us a lot about you and what you're looking for and what you're experiencing through your journey of CMMC. There is a survey at the end too that we'd like you to fill out. We appreciate the feedback. We do these webinars once a month, so feedback on future webinars is also welcome. At the end of this, which we're taping, the link will be sent to you in an email 2 hours, sorry, not 2 years, 2 hours after the webinar ends, and then that way you'll be able to access the link and maybe pass it on to someone that you work with. If you're experiencing any delays, we do have others listening in that are technical, and they can help you out if you can't hear or there's a glitch in answering a polling question. Sometimes pressing F5 will help, may not. Don't hold me to that, but it could help you. All right. So just remember, whenever we do these webinars, our advice in any of the information from any of the panel members, is not in-depth and specific to your company. So you really need to, ask us questions, and maybe we talk afterwards. A lot of this is general information and what we've seen, what we've observed. Anything here which should not be relied upon, you should always double check with your outside experts or internal company experts on what you're doing with your CMMC journey. Okay, so we are going to start out with introductions. We have a wonderful panel, the Dream Team panel of some folks here at ConResnic that are dealing with CMMC, and then we have CISOs from some really wonderful government contractors that agreed to help us out and provide us with their journey. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the timeline. We do have questions that you all have provided us ahead of time. And so we're going to give you a timeline and just, what to expect as the CMMC rule is phased in. So first, let me turn it over, and then I'll introduce myself fully at the end and ask a polling question. But what I'm going to do is pass it over to Mark Brayler with MTSI. He's one of our panelists. Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Christine. My name is Mark Brayler. I'm currently the CISO for MTSI. I've been with the company for 8 years and in the role of Director of Information Security / CISO for about 6 years. So we've been in our path down the 800-171 since about 2018.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. Our other panelist who is not on video, but is on his phone, Ted Freeman is here with us, and he's the Chief Information Officer at INSCO. Ted, how are you today?
I'm doing fine this afternoon, and welcome to everybody. My name is Ted Freeman, CIO of INSCO Inc. I am probably the last 3 years, I've been with INSCO over 20 years, but I spent the last 5 years focusing primarily on our InfoSec journey and our CMC DFARS compliance. So it's been quite a journey, and look forward to sharing some of those moments with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. All right, and then we have Steve Gilmer. He's a director here at Cohen-Resnick. Steve, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Christine. Afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are. Steve Gilmer, 30 plus years of doing this. And when it comes to CMMC and the DFARS journey, I've been here since the beginning. With the drafts in 2013, was the sole test case as CISO for Sikorsky on the original cyber DFARS. So been here since day one and watching it grow as it goes on.
All right. And then in the room with me is Dariush Brabody, and he's going to introduce himself. He's with Cohen-Resnick as well.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dariush Brabody. I'm 25 plus years experience in IT and cybersecurity. I'm also a CMMC CCA certified assessor. Hopefully you will get a lot of information from this webinar. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for being here. And again, I'm Christine Williamson. I'll be the moderator. I am with Cohen-Resnick in the government contracting practice for over 30 years. I manage the advisory part of our government contracting practice. I also help companies with their audit and their strategic moves as they mature as a government contractor and all sorts of compliance in addition to CMMC. But when we have CMMC, we bring in our cyber guys, Dariush and Steve, to help us out and others that we have. Just a little bit more about our practice. We focus on federal contractors, helping them optimize their performance, making sure that they're getting their audits done, their tax and their business advisory services that they need. So we're providing a full life cycle support up to the government contractor. So we enjoy being proactive and giving good advice all throughout the year to our government contractors. And that's really why we do these webinars, is to give back to the community. A little bit about INSCO. Mark, maybe you could just, Ted, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dariush. Ted, maybe if you could just say a few words on INSCO. I've got your slide up.
That's good. Thank you very much. INSCO has been in business over 60 years, over 60 years right now. And we focus on several industries, rail, ground transportation, aerospace, engineering. We're one of those companies you come to if you're looking for a unique solution for signal processing. Was kind of like the basis of the origin of the company, which means if it produces a signal, we have engineers and scientists who can scope that signal and give definition to it. It's been a very interesting company for the last 25 years of my career, and like I said, very much big in the aerospace industry at this point. So, thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, now Mark, MTSI, give us a brief overview on MTSI.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Similar to what Ted was saying, we are 30 years, so half of what INSCO is. So we just hit our 30-year anniversary. So I've been here for 8 of those years. It's a fantastic company, mostly in the aerospace industry. Almost 100%, close to 100% government contracts. So MTSI has been a fantastic company, and we've got definite buy-in from the leadership for cybersecurity and CMMC, 100%.
Well, good. Yes. And MTSI and ENSCO have great leaders that we work with, and we appreciate them having you be here with us. All right. So our first polling question, everybody heads up that needs a CPE. And also, we just like to know who's here on the webinar with us. It really helps us out to understand the company that are here, the size. It helps us answering questions. So I can start to see how many people are answering the questions as you start to answer them. And as you answer, because we want to make sure everybody gets a chance, let me read a summary of the proposed rule, just to make sure everyone knows. The proposed rule came out December 26th. We have been waiting for this and waiting for this to hit the Federal Registry, really, literally. Keeping our fingers crossed that they had gotten it done so that the 60-day comment period could start. So comments on the Federal Register need to be submitted by February 26th of this year, 60 days from the day that it was published. So far, there's 76 comments on the register, and they do have the ability to vet the comments first. So there might be more. We'll talk about that in a little bit, where, you know, we've heard organizations are grouping together and, you know, really focusing and looking on how to respond with their comments. So we expect a lot more to be on. And so you can go on the Federal Register every day and read those comments and look at those. It's very easy to find. If you type in Federal Register CMMC, it should come up. It's being viewed in public inspection. You know, it's got a high number of views, almost 2,000 views so far. So so that's good. Make sure if you have not seen it yet that you're going to take a look. We're going to run through the timeline and then, you know, kind of dive into some questions to the panel. So I see 71 attendees so far that have answered, 72 now. So I'm going to close the polling. I'm, you know, try to give you as much time as you can to get that in, but I'm going to go ahead and close the polling. All right. So there you go. Mark and Ted and Dariush and Steve, take a look at this. 26% is our largest of the greater than 250 million size companies in revenue that are on, but we have good numbers in all sizes. And I'm sure we would see that, right? We know primes have to deal with CMMC, the subcontractors, you know, the supply chain. So I'm not surprised with the variety of revenue range. So we got a good mix. Okay. So for the CMMC overview, let me read to you the summary of the proposed rule and just try to get everybody in the right framework to make sure you understand what this rule says, and, you know, of course, download it afterwards. But DoD, you know, has proposed these established requirements for a comprehensive and scalable assessment mechanism. That's what this is. They are assessing your cybersecurity and what the maturity is. And they want that to ensure defense contractors and subcontractors, they specifically made sure they put subcontractors in there, have these implemented required security measures to expand the application of existing security requirements for federal contract information, which is FCI, and then and add new controlled unclassified information security requirements for certain programs. So there were some controlled unclassified information security requirements before, and now they're adding to that. The Department of Defense currently requires covered defense contractors and the subcontractors to implement these security protections as set forth in NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards of Technology, and that special publication 800-171, revision 2, to provide adequate security for sensitive unclassified DoD information that is processed, stored, or transmitted on the contractor whether that be the prime or the sub information systems, and to document their implementation status. This will include any plans of action for NIST 171 requirements not implemented as well. And you would do all that in something called a system security plan, which is SSP. You'll hear us talk about that. In the Federal Register rule, there are definitions of all these. We're in the federal government, so we love acronyms. System security plan. You will get to know that very well. You will sleep with it, right? It'll have it on your desk. Yes. So the CMMC program provides the department, the Defense Department, the mechanism needed to verify that as a defense contractor or a subcontractor that you've implemented the security requirements at whatever level you are at, which is either a level 1, 2, or 3. There's not 5 anymore. There's 3. And is maintaining the status across the contract period of performance. There's going to be, different times where you're assessed. Your assessment is good for a certain amount of time. And then there will be a correction plan if there's some of those that you don't, that you can't comply with. So that's really the summary of the proposed rule. And what I'm going to have Dariush do now is go over the timeline. So Dariush, why don't you go through what the CMMC timeline's been?
Sure. The CMMC, as everybody knows, was published on December 26th of 2023. So now we are in the public comment period until for the 60 days, which going to end at February 26, 2023. In March 2024, sorry, we change here. And the DoD is going to do 2 things through March and December, and the reason for that timeline is based on that on 2 things. So one, the DoD has to answer every comment. So the more comments the DoD receives, the more it's going to take them to answer it. It's not, they don't answer the comments by just having somebody write down the comment. It has to go through a committee. It has to go through legal and stuff like that. So you would imagine it's going to take the DoD a long time to respond to the comments. The other gating factor in here is this is a major rule. It's a proposed major rule. So Congress needs to chime in. So after the Department of Defense has finished the comments, responding to the comments, they're going to send the rule to Congress. Congress has 60 days to act on it. And the Congress cannot change anything. It's just that the Congress can say, no, you cannot have the rule. And of course, it has to be like, they have to vote on it and the president has to approve it. The president can veto it. But anyhow, it adds like 60 days to the timeline. That's what's important. And then, so hopefully based on this timeline, the rule will be finalized in hopefully January 2025. And the 4-phased approach, so the DoD in the rule has specified they're going to roll out CMMC by phases. They're not going to just like, roll it out all at once. The goal being right now that CMMC will be included in all the contracts by October 2026 as the 4 phases ends. Now, there is another action that's happening in 2024. Let's go back. Namely, that they are going to rewrite. So right now, the DFARS rules, the 7020, 7012, all those 7021, to include the CMMC rule in those other rules. Because right now, for example, if you look at the 7020 rule, it just says you need a NIST 800-171 assessment. It doesn't specify anything else. So now they're going to change all those rules, and the date for publication of those rules is March of 2024. And then those rules are going to go through that whole rulemaking process also. So there is two things that's going to happen.
Okay, good. And we're going to go over the phase rollout too. Yeah.
Yeah, later.
So, but what I'd like to do is start with Ted. And Ted, I think, you know, that we've got well over 150 folks here. I think it would be interesting for you to just talk about your journey in the NIST standards and CMMC, and what including, you know, how your leadership has embraced it as well.
Thank you. I'd like to start off kind of where Mark left. Our leadership has been behind this all the way from the board of directors to our presidents, all the way down to our business unit managers on down the line. It's been very well supported.
Well, that's good. And then talk about your journey when you started. You know, how did you? It was several years ago, I'm sure, or many before that. Just what your journey has been in implementing the NIST standards and preparing for CMMC.
All right. We started with the 800-171, trying to have that installed, implemented throughout the organization. And we have a balance of commercial and DoD work. So we had to make sure that we were focusing, obviously, the CMC DFARS and CMC focuses on the DoD portion of it. But as we shaped our environment, we had to make sure that we actually took into account the commercial industry part of our business as well. So we found a balancing act where we could address the DoD, the DFARS elements, as well as use that to leverage ISO for our commercial part of the business. As we've kind of grown over the years, to say this a journey is probably an understatement, because a journey kind of includes you go down one path. We've had to make several twists and turns along the way to adjust to different changes, interpretations of controls, making sure we're implementing into the spirit of the controls. So you have to kind of learn along the way. I don't think anybody goes into this knowing up front exactly what to do. I think you learn along the way. You have interpretations of the rules along the way. You make adjustments along the way. Sometimes you take a step back and a step forward. Where we are right now, we feel very comfortable in our CMMC posture, and that's based on the involvement of several 3PAOs to help us along the way, interpret the rules, different legal advice. So you have to bring in a lot of expertise and a lot of different elements. But the journey the journey continues. It doesn't stop. That's the thing that you try to enforce upon your environment, that it doesn't end. It's continuous. So you continually evaluate where you are. You continue to assess where you are, make corrections, and move forward. So it's quite an extensive journey. But in the end, when you start seeing it come together across an organization, you start seeing people fall into a certain mold and start kind of living these controls. That's when you know you're starting to catch hold. So it's been quite a journey and quite an adventure, but it's one that I think that as far as implementing good cyber posture and good cyber hygiene, as we like to say, I think it's one that I'm glad we've undertaken, just for the sake of the way this brought the company along.
Good. Mark, how about you talk about your journey and also how leadership has had to embrace it as well? Because I know it's a culture change for all businesses.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Thanks, Christine. Now, like Ted said, it is a journey, and it's going to be a never-ending journey, because there's things going to be gone. Even after you get your CMMC certification, there's going to be annual affirmations and everything. So it's going to be the never-ending journey. Like I said in my intro, the company and leadership is fully behind all of our cyber posture and getting everything up to speed and compliant. So our security department is separate than our IT department, and we've got a fantastic working relationship between the two departments, which is essential. That's been a huge part of us and in our journey, the ability for our security folks to work with our IT team to, levy the requirements to them and have them apply everything that's needed for the network. So between our CEO and our CIO, myself and the CSO in the company, we've got a great background, which started right about the time I came into this position in 2018. And it's been essentially my life for the last 6 years. And, I'm sure it will be until I leave the company, which is hopefully upon retirement. So, but yeah, it's been a journey. We started with the 171 initially, went through everything and thought we were good to go. And then the 171 Alpha came out, and we learned we weren't quite as ready to go as we thought we were. So, like you said, it's a journey, and we're continuing down it. So we're standing by and ready for the rule to be officially released in the next year or so.
All right.
I'd like to. Can I step back on one a comment on Mark? The relationship between your IT and your security folks is critical. It is crucial. I cannot stress that enough. I spent most of my career on the IT side of the fence. So the last 5 years for me has been getting up to speed on the security, the InfoSec side. There's always a kind of a natural tension. You have to find a bridge so those teams start working together and see one as an extension of the other. Because without that critical element, you will not be successful, I can guarantee you. So I want to just stress strongly what Mark just spaced about that relationship. It has to be a good, tight working relationship.
Yeah, Ted, it's a critical point, and it goes beyond IT and it goes beyond the InfoSec teams, right? You each mentioned your boards, you each mentioned your leadership, the support throughout the company. It really is a cultural change, and that's what we're talking about. The cliche statement, but it's true. Security by design. We are purposely doing this. We are making it part of our culture, our activities, the way we approach everything, and that's the intent of it when you get down to it. Those interactions are critical.
So, Steve, you have a real interesting background with CMMC and it getting off the ground. You wanna go through that a little bit, because it just adds so much color to the story.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, been involved since 2013. As CISO at Sikorsky, we were the original and sole cyber test case for the original cyber DFARS. So I spent a long time discussing, negotiating, debating, to be honest, with NIST, with the DIB, with the DOD, with branches in the military, what that would mean. And so, I can tell you there were more expansive dreams that are not here today, but you still see the general intent. And the general intent was simple. They wanted what they now call CUI, but they're critical information, right? We can all think of it as our important stuff, and it doesn't have to be defined beyond that. Whatever is important to us as an organization, to ensure that it was protected, and it was protected at a minimum level across all organizations. At one point they were asking as primes, would we be willing to go out and actually act as what we now call a C3PAO, although that term was not being used at the time, to go out and audit all of our subs. I had 20,000 subs. I was not going to go out and audit 20,000 organizations on top of trying to run, my own. I didn't want to have that level of knowledge of all of my subs, right? That's getting very personal and in depth. I didn't want to be the retention of all that information. But, again, the DoD is asking the right question, and that's how do we know that our information is protected as we give it to the prime and the prime passes it down? And that's ultimately the intent of this. There's a ton of work being done around CMMC, but at the heart of it, you boil it down in simplistic terms. Meet NIST 800-171. Versions 1 and 2 didn't change. They were just clarity to make things a little bit easier to read. It's the same standard we were talking about in 2013. Go meet NIST 800-171. Have a basic level of protection in place. Everything else around CMMC really is the bureaucratic side of it. And there's some important things there. I don't mean to, push it off, but it's how do I legally enforce it? It's how do I put it into contracts? How do I ensure you're complying? The heart of it is still NIST 800-171. And, we're going to see, if we went really big picture here and look forward, you're going to see CMMC or some version of it requiring NIST 800-171 go across all government agencies, civilian and defense, in the future. So, this is good practice, not just for defense companies, but NIST 800-171 is a good practice for all companies. So lots of war stories as we get into it. I'm happy to share them.
that segues into our next polling question. We're 30 minutes in, so we'll go ahead and do a polling question. And really, that how would you define your organization? Are you a 100% federal contractor, not just DoD, but even civilian agencies? Are you 100%, or could you just be a 100% commercial entity and you're thinking about getting into the federal business? This is something you should be thinking about in addition to other types of compliance. And then, are you a mix of commercial and government? That would be option C, which we know a lot of companies have done that. It's less and less that you're just 100%. And then, are you none of the above? So if you would answer that for us, we've got 60% that have answered it so far. And I love that part that Ted, you started talking about, and Mark, the security and the IT department. I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think some folks on here probably don't know at what size they should really separate that. Steve, is there any size limit that you would say would separate security and IT, or is it something that you could do at any time in the business?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And it really depends on your business and your business processes. It's not the amount of money that you generate or, do I have 10 people or 10,000 people, right? It's how do my business processes work? And what is that? And when we talk about what's in NIST 800-171, it's really about giving your organizational situational awareness of what's going on and operational awareness. The side effects, the intent is obviously cyber protection, but the side effects is I have better IT operations after I implement this, because all those things that and we all have it in our life, right? If I only had time to go get X done, how wonderful would that be? Well, this forces us to go get those things done. I have an asset inventory that's updated. I know where my data flows, not some data, all my data, how it flows. I know what can talk to what. I know now when I have an issue, I have the right documents, I have the right diagrams. So separating it really becomes part of your processes. At some point, in both Ted and Mark touched on it, IT, their job is to implement as effective and efficient, I should say, and cost effective as possible. They will do that sometimes, not intentionally, but at the cost of security. The InfoSec's team is to protect the organization. So you need to have those conversations, those debates to figure it out and go in the direction that is right. Sometimes you, as an organization, you're going to choose to accept a risk. Other times you're going to look at it and say that's not an acceptable risk and make those decisions. So that's why you want those two organizations and the ability to talk through what's important to you.
Okay, good. So I closed the polling, Steve, and Ted, Mark, and Dariush. And so it says we have a mixture of government contractors at 45%, and then we have 35% that are 100%. So that's a really good mix.
Which was expected because the commercial, 100% commercial, why they should divide by C.
Right.
So Christine, could we, I think that's a great segue, if you don't mind, into the first question that's out there from Jim Walsh.
Sure.
So he'd ask about, he said they're not currently processing CUI. However, they've essentially put everything into place, right? They've got policies, procedures, they're doing the training, and they've got the technology based on what he's saying there. And they're hearing that that's not good, potentially. I'm shocked you're hearing it's not good. There is nothing in CMMC, there's nothing in what NIST has put out, the DoD, that is not encouraging organizations to go above and beyond NIST 800-171. It is the minimum level. I'd also say, Jim, and I'll open it up to the rest of the panel here for their thoughts. As someone who has been at the Prime, as someone who had 20,000 subs, I am counting on organizations like yours to do this and get that certification, because I can leverage that for my own assurance and back up to the DoD. Hey, you meet everything we need to do. I want to work with your business. So I see it as a business enabler. Dariush, Ted, Mark, thoughts?
I would just like to say that we've kind of held our hat because we're like I said, we're commercial and DoD. It's about cyber best practices. Those are, those kind of carry across all industries and across all environments. So if you look at it more from the standpoint of having a good cyber base, a good protective cyber infosec base, it applies to everything you do as an organization. So I see it more as best practices.
Agreed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. Like you said, Steve, the CMMC or 800-171 is, minimum cybersecurity. So you're protecting your company and your data to the level that the government is requiring. So I can't imagine anyone coming in and telling you that you shouldn't be doing that. So as Steve said, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree. So 800-171 is nothing more than the, NIST's interpretation for non-federal systems of 853 medium baseline, which is the Bible of cybersecurity, all the controls and so on and so forth by that. And that medium baseline is also the basis of NIST cybersecurity framework, which is the basis for lots of other industries that have other frameworks. Like for the financial services industry, they use that. The New York Department of Financial Services is based on that. The new cyber requirements of California's CCPA, the privacy that requires third-party audits, is based on that. So these are literally best practices. Forget about you have CUI, not CUI. If you do that, you are protecting your company, your firm against outside threats. So if anybody says that's not a good way of doing things, they don't know what they're talking about. Like in my opinion.
Right. Okay. A couple other questions that are coming up. Where can you find out more about CMMC and its history? Actually, in the Federal Register, it gives you the history. So we have somebody, Walter, pull up that Federal Register, and you'll be able to. It's 80 pages,
Yeah.
And it gives you the summary, gives you the acronyms, gives you the different levels, gives you cost. Average number of companies, cost to implement per the government, and how they came up with it. So that's how I would look for that. Anywhere else, Steve, that you would
Christine, I was just going to say about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, Jacob Horn, who's with Summit 7, did a fantastic webinar where he spends an hour and a half or so just talking about the history. And he walks through the original executive orders that precede the cyber DFARS, everything. He walks you through about a 15-year history of what presidents ordered, what the DoD did, and a whole response that got us to CMMC. And let's be clear on what CMMC is. Again, when what we call CMMC today came out in 2013, 2014, it was the cyber DFARS. And the cyber DFARS was, boiled down pretty simply. I, as a company, agree to meet NIST 800-171. I understand I may have some gaps. I may not be perfect. So I'm going to have a POEM, or a plan of action and milestones. And these are things that I need to correct and fix, deficiencies, essentially. And I will do that in a reasonable time to make sure that I'm implementing NIST 800-171. And the bottom line is all the organizations in the DIB, self-attested as required, did not go meet NIST 800-171. Now, some organizations did. I'm not calling it out. This is just the bulk of them did not. So the government said, that's it. We tried to trust you. We gave you the options. You had ability to do it on your schedule as long as you reasonably made progress. You failed to do that. So they put CMMC in place. CMMC is still NIST 800-171, but now they're saying you have no choice. We are going to send a C3PAO in, and they are going to verify that you meet everything and you are perfect on everything. You will also affirm, which is, the legal equivalent in a contract of giving an oath every year that we meet this and we keep this in place. So they're setting organizations up for who don't do this for false claims acts and other ability to go after them legally for failing to do that. So, that in itself, it's just, we're watching. We all know cyber in general. You don't have to say CMMC or NIST or anything like that. We all know all the losses that happen across every industry. This is the DoD's approach to set a minimum baseline in place and protect their data for national security reasons.
A good point that Ted brought up about being commercial and government, and he not only had to balance NIST regulations, but also ISO 27001. Ted, talk about that, because we had a question. This is the question, is there any indication that ISO 27001 certification would be considered in place of CMMC on the civilian side? What have you heard on that, or what did you experience?
Well, what we experienced was our commercial side that had the 27001 requirements. When we started working with them, because we were focusing mainly on the CMMC side of the house, we found out that they had built their whole response based on what we had done, which they would not have been able to do a couple of years earlier prior to that. I have not heard anything where 27001 will have CMMC requirements, but I think Steve had said something earlier where CMMC or something will spread across all different industries to some extent. So having the CMMC as our foundational foundation kind of helped and made their journey in this ISO world a lot easier. So we kind of, like I said, you're leveraging one against the other, but if you go back to the assumption that this is all best practices, cyber best practices, and not attach a name to it or regulation to it, if you have that, I think it gives you a foundation to move in a lot of different directions.
I heard the same thing. I put in a lot of business systems, whether it's estimating, purchasing, accounting, EVMS, and companies tried to use ISO to replace the DFARS criteria for business systems. And I just feel like since ISO is not specific to FAR, it misses some of the criteria that, maybe that higher level compliance as a contractor. So I feel that companies tried to use that same rationale for being exempt from DFARS business system rules and use their ISO in place, and that hasn't come to fruition.
No.
According to CyberMD, which is the certification body for CMMC, there are conversations going on between the DoD CIO and the DoD CMMC program manager and their counterparts in allied countries to clarify, the impact of CMMC, let's say, on a French defense firm or so on and so forth. So those conversations are ongoing. Nothing concrete yet. The only indication is that the Canadian Ministry of Defense has indicated that they are going to implement CMMC in Canada. So the conversation between the defense department here and the MOD in Canada is ongoing on implementation of CMMC in Canada. The same thing is happening also with the Ministry of Defense in Israel. But as far as the other allied countries, nothing concrete yet. But it's going to happen. They're going to come up with a certain equivalency.
Okay. Let me ask a polling questions, and let's find out, guys, just, with these organizations that we have on here, what level would they assign their organization right now? Level 1, so as I mentioned, there's 3 levels. Level 1, you would do the self-certification. Level 2, You would need a C3 PAO to come in and audit, and level 3 is where you would need DCMA to come in, the DIBCAC. And so that is your highest level. And then those of you who don't know. So go ahead and assign your organization. And while they do that, I'll just throw this out to the panel. One of the questions that we just got is, what is the best practice for a small business to handle CUI? And I'll let one of you take that.
Now, the simple best practice is start now. There's a fallacy, in my opinion, that, you know, this is easier for larger companies. Larger companies tend to have legacy. They tend to have more processes. They tend to have multiple ways of doing things. It can be more difficult. I've helped companies that are, you know, literally single digits in terms of employees go after NIST 800-171 and comply with it. And the point is, you can start it now. You can start it while you're small. You can have the policies and procedures. It doesn't affect a lot. I mean, I've literally had one company that had 8 laptops that they bought from Best Buy. That was their entire asset inventory, right? So you start building that out now. Then you start looking at that in terms of other things like, where am I going to go get storage, or what cloud provider am I going to use, or what managed service provider do I want to use in the future? And you're thinking about CMMC up front, right? So you're looking at the right partners. So you're building out from the beginning with this in mind, and I think that's critical. There's challenges on each side, small and big, right? They're different challenges. But if you're small, the biggest advice I could give you is start now, make it a part of your culture, embrace it, and do it. And you won't have the challenges of going, how do I change 100,000 endpoints? This is overwhelming.
I'm going to close the polling. You guys keep talking. Go ahead,
Sure.
Dariush, and let's see what level folks are. But go ahead, Dariush.
And there are lots of, for small businesses, there are lots of resources available to help you become CMMC, both the compliant, both the Department of Defense, and also your state governments. They have grants available through various, because the Department of Defense has made those grants available to various states to help small businesses become CMMC compliant. One of the promises that the Department of Defense has given to the DEEP community, to the defense industrial base, that they want to make sure that the impact of CMMC on small businesses is minimized. They don't want to lose the small business community. So they are very working with the Small Business Administration and with the various state agencies to try to make sure that they can ameliorate the cost of implementation of CMMC for small businesses. Yeah.
And Dariush, I this is a personal opinion, what I'm about to say, so everybody's aware of that. But, you know, if we were to just take all the cyber regulations and requirements and rank them on a scale from 0 being nothing, you know, to 10 being the top and the hardest and everything you need to do, really CMMC probably falls about a 6. But where I believe we've made a mistake as a country, right, is Congress hasn't passed a comprehensive cyber requirement for all businesses. So going from 0 to 6, that's onerous. But if everybody, say, was at a 3, you know, now we've got a baseline, and if you decide to do work with the DIB and you're going from a 3 to a 6, that's an evolution. That's something you can work with. The problem is most of us are looking at it from a 0 right now, and that makes it hard. And that's not CMMC's fault, in my opinion, but it is why so many companies, I do believe, look at it and feel challenged.
Well, that's a nice segue also, Steve. You're always good at this, to look at the polling. We have 35% that would assign themselves as level 2, but look at that, 36.6% says they don't know. So it's either they really just don't know and they're going back and forth between 2 and 3, or they really haven't thought about it yet.
If I may, Christine, I'll give another. This is based on lots of years of experience. Most of you will be level 2. Bottom line, level 1 means I have federal contract information, but no CUI. Level 2 means I have CUI, or I will be dealing with CUI, generating it, whatever you do. Level 3 means essentially I have advanced CUI. A very small percentage of companies will need to be level 3. However, what is going to happen is that even though percentage-wise, and the DoD has all these numbers in the rules that they just put out, even though percentage-wise, most organizations, they say, will only need to qualify for level 1. As I said, as your primes, you have so many subs that you can't verify. You need your folks to be at level 2 just so you can hand them work. We have a new contract. We had somebody that just dropped off. Can you step up? Right? These are quick moving. You guys know the business environment. So they're going to look for you to be level 2 so that they can always rely on you for work. That's not the DoD's answer. They will tell you about 60% of you need to be level 1. This is my answer coming from the primes and experience and telling you what the reality of it has been throughout my career and how I ask my subs.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that question about the small business?
Sure.
I think one of the things, it can be intimidating looking at the regulations and the controls and implementing those. And I think it ties to something Steve said, but you have to find a good partner. You have to find somebody to work with to kind of help you through that part of it and kind of make you feel comfortable that whether you have 8 computers, 3 or 1,000 or 10,000 endpoints, it's about finding that partner up front to start that path, going that journey with. Because looking at our journey in the very beginning, it was a matter of stumbling through some organizations who presented themselves as practitioners and things like that, but really didn't have the experience to go along with that. So you can be easily misguided in those early part stages if you don't find the right partner that you feel comfortable with, their knowledge, their background, and their capabilities to bring to your organization. So I think that's key as a small business.
Yeah, to piggyback on that as well, another option for the small businesses is the joint venture solution, where you have a mentor-protege type relationship between the two companies. So find yourself a company that's been through the process, that has a strong cyber background that can help you through your process.
Just answered a question mark that we had about tips and suggestions for small business and joint venture partners ensuring CMMC compliance and preparing for that certification. So that's good. We also want to talk about our subcontractors. And Mark, since you're still visible there, why don't you talk about your communication with your subs, if you can?
So with CMMC and 800-171, there's a flow down rule for that. Everything that you're responsible for, you have to flow down to your subs. So as of right now, we do a spreadsheet, and every company, every prime does it differently. We just simply do an Excel spreadsheet, and we flow that down upon contract award to all of our subcontractors that they fill out. Starts with, will you or will you not be handling CUI on this contract? If not, you attest that you will not process, you will not store, you will not do anything with CUI on this contract. They sign it, they send it back to us. We file it. We let all our PMs and contract administrators know that, no CUI can flow down to this contractor. And if they answer yes, then they answer a bunch of other questions. Do you have an SSP? Do you have a POAM? So are you compliant with the current DFARS clauses? And based on their responses, we'll either go back and tell them that they're not compliant, or if they're compliant, then we, file that, let PMs and CAs know they can flow down CUI. And that's one of the big changes that's going to happen when CMMC becomes a thing, is verification of the subs on the contract and verification of all the subs on the contract. So right now it's kind of the wild, wild west. We ask them, they say yes, they are, and we have to take them at their word that they're good. They've got their SPURS score in. And we don't ask their SPUR score, but I've seen others that do. But that's based on a self-assessment as well. So, you can be compliant right now and have 0 of the 110 controls applied as long as you have those 110 controls listed on a POAM. So you check the box, you have an SSP, you have a POAM, you're compliant with the DFARS clause. Well, when CMMC comes out and becomes a rule, the POAM goes away. Any POAM items that are assessed by a C3PAO, you have 180 days to close it. And then that C3PAO has to come back out and verify that you've closed your POAM items before you can get your certification. So that's going to be the big change. And the other change is affirmation. So every contractor has to affirm that they've, done their CMMC annual assessment, and the primes have to verify. They also have to affirm that they've verified that the subcontractors on your contract and the subs of the subs, it doesn't specify how deep you have to go. It says all subcontractors. So in the past, we had dealt with tier 1, maybe even tier 2, but now they're talking all subcontractors on the contract. So that's going to be a heavy lift for the primes to affirm every year that all subs on the contract are certified at the level that they're required to be certified at.
That's great, Mark. I think that we're going to talk about that a little bit more with subs, but what someone said before, and also we just got a question, what year will DoD have to be CMMC compliant? So let's go through the CMMC phased rollout, and then maybe somebody can take a little bit about DoD and also, but I think Dariush, I'm going to go to the next slide. And let you, okay, everybody can see the phase out rule. Dariush is going to,
I'm gonna come closer.
Yeah, Dariush is going to talk about the phase out rule so you can see what the phases are as this comes out.
Yeah, so the DoD phase out rollout and yearly assessment estimates are based on the 48 CFR. This is government speak about how the rules are organized within the Federal Register and within the federal government. So that's where the DFARS clauses reside, because the DFARS clauses are the enabling clauses. The CMMC rule clause just describes the rule. Most of the requirements of CMMC rule is for actually organizations such as CONRESNIC that are C3PAO and RPO organizations. Now, a very small amount of that rule applies to contractor, except it describes the CMMC environment. The DFARS clauses are the rules that are going to apply to the contractors and subcontractors. The phase 1, which begins at the effective date when the new 48 CFR CMMC rules, so that's the rewriting of 7012, 7020, 7021. I think there is going to be a 7023, something like that. Then at the first thing they're going to do, they're going to roll out level 1 and level 2 self-assessment requirements in the contract. So CMMC level 1, the folks that only have federal contract information, and then the level 2 self-assessment is some of the CUI basic, and this is at the discretion of the program manager for the program, where he or she can accept a self-assessment in lieu of a third-party assessment for CUI handling. Again, this is at the discretion of the DoD. The rules around self-assessment of level CUI has not been fleshed out. So we don't know what the Department of Defense is going to require and how many percentage is going to be self-assessment versus versus third-party assessment. Most of the people who I talk to, and I'm reading, the various forums, they are saying a majority of the contracts will be third-party assessment. So phase 2 begins 6 months after the start of phase 1. They're going to implement phase 2, which is the third-party assessment of CMMC level 2. So they're going to put the requirements for third-party assessment in level 2. Now, at that moment, again, DoD discretion, there may be a handful of contracts that will have the level 3 requirement. for highly sensitive CUI. Again, these are still unclassified, but they are very sensitive. They're mostly around, they're going to be mostly around aerospace. So MTSI probably will have some, and the Navy's unclassified nuclear information. So those are going to be around level 3. Then 1 year after the start of phase 2, then there is going to be CMMC level 2 certification in all contracts, and CMMC level certification also in all applicable application and contracts. It's going to be 1 year after the start, which currently people are estimating is going to be October 2026. And phase 4, 1 year after the start of phase 3, CMMC in all contracts, but also in all addendums, all extensions, and so on and so forth. So that's where everything is going to be covered by the CMMC requirement.
So Dariush, I'll add to that. Listening to that timeline does not tell you when, as an organization, you will need to be CMMC compliant. So again, I don't think we mentioned it on this call. On average, it takes an organization 12 to 18 months who is not compliant today to become compliant. So somewhere in that timeline, either as a prime, you're going to ask to do it, or as a sub, you're going to be asked to be compliant. And you don't know when that's going to come. For most of us, it's much sooner than that timeline says, because of the way there's so many subs on so many contracts. So just encourage you to do that. And Christine, to go to your original question, what year will the DoD have to be CMMC compliant? The answer is no year. They are not going to be CMMC compliant. CMMC is for contractors. It's for all of us. The DoD follows another set of rules, technically more stringent. They are under obligations to get to zero trust, which is much more advanced than what we're talking about here. They're also failing at it, guys. They're huge, they're complicated. I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just being realistic of what's going on. It's hard, it's difficult. Zero trust is something we will all get to, but that's a whole nother conversation and not for today. And I don't want to derail this. But so the DoD follows another set of rules, just like Dariush earlier talked about, NIST 800-53, which everything derives from. That is correct. But if you think of NIST 853, especially say V2 or V1, it's currently on V5. It's like you used to see in the movies when it's time to launch nuclear missiles and you've got, two folks in uniform that are standing 10 feet apart and they both have to turn the key at the same time. Well, NIST 853 was written like that for government agencies. So it's very difficult to apply it to, the rest of the world and what we do in our organization. So NIST 800-171 took that away and distilled it into something that we can do in our businesses.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to let the question, let me let the, and you keep talking as well. I'm going to put a question out for everyone so you guys can answer it. And it's, let me read it and then we'll go to Dariush. How seriously does your leadership at your organization view CMMC compliance? So just looking at that phase and looking at the, the 6 months and the year, it kind of would say that you have a little bit of time to get prepared, but really you need to get started. So talking to your leadership is so important. A is our leadership and board are fully vested. B, they aren't quite aligned with the resource requirements. C, you haven't had the conversation yet, or none of the above. So we'll let folks answer that. And Dariush, go ahead.
On the DoD front, DoD is currently at NIST 853 Rep 4 high confidence level. So that means that every single control in 853 applies to the DoD, and they have passed it, and an independent assessor has assessed them that they have passed the 853. So all the components they just met the requirements. The last component, I think, met it last year sometime. So they're now starting the journey to become Ref 5, and at the same time, Zero Trust per the memo that President Biden published last year that requires the federal government to implement Zero Trust principles.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Christine, can I
thought-
jump in just for a second?
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, to go back to the timeline, like Steve mentioned, 12 to 18 month process. CMMC certification is going to be a pre-award requirement. So you cannot wait until CMMC shows up in a contract or an RFP, because if it has, it's too late. You're not going to even be able to bid. So the time is now to start getting started with your certification process, because in 12 months or 2 years from now, however long it takes for the rule to be finalized, once a CMMC starts showing up in contracts, if you don't have a certification, you're not even going to be able to bid.
All right, I'm glad you mentioned that. And the C3 PAOs are being talked to now. They're lining up the audit clients that they need. So, there's only so many of them. How many is there now, Steve, on the website that are approved?
I'm not sure what the current number is. Do you know, Darius?
Okay, but we're somewhere under 50.
Around 50.
Yeah.
Around 50 and
So
like 125 assessors, right? People that are trained to actually do the assessment. So what that means is that, there's not going to be a ton of bandwidth to go do these when it gets unleashed. And organizations are signing up now to say, make me first in line. I'll take second. I'll take third. So,
right.
that bandwidth is being booked. Along with that, Christine, there's a question in there. What happens if I have classified information in my environment? So that's a really good question. The simple answer is you need to do CMMC. The foundation for your classified projects, contracts, whatever they are, those will have additional requirements above and beyond. Most primes, we run a ton of classified, and we still meet CMMC. It's just CMMC is the minimum. It's the baseline, right? What happens in your classified environment can be very unique. Sometimes it may be in violation of CMMC, and that's okay because it is classified and it operates under a different set of rules and regulations. And it's a whole different world. Like, guys, we're all sitting here on our devices today, right? We're in laptops. Most of us have monitors. Like, your classified environment for the last 20 years has had to shield those cables going to your monitors, because we know that the RF signals leaking from that cable can allow somebody from 50 feet away to see what's on your monitor clearly, just like we know that they can listen to the clack of your keyboard, know what you're typing. So classified environments deal with all that. CUI, CMMC does not.
Yeah.
So we just closed the poll, and about 67% said the leaderships are fully invested in the process. So I think those of you who didn't know which level you were, you're probably still trying to figure that out, but you've got leadership behind you, and then 13% that aren't quite aligned. So hopefully send them this link afterwards. And it's on federalregister.gov. Somebody had asked that, so that you can type in CMMC, put in December 26, 2023, and it should pop up for you. Back to if you were going to mention something, why don't you go, Darius, and then we'll go to Ted after that, and just how.
No, I was just going to mention on classified information. The classified information, each classification has its own rule, and technically, classified information are out of scope of CMMC. CMMC is for unclassified information. Classified information, your security officer, if you're handling classified information, you have a security officer, and that security officer has been reading on the requirements for that classification. And you have to keep those environments separate anyhow from your unclassified environment. So that's there will be it's not even a logical separation. It's actually a physical separation between the two environments.
Okay. So Ted, we had Mark talk about how he was tracking and communicating with his subs. Is there anything else you wanted to add into that? You have any other different mechanisms that you're tracking your subs right now?
No, it's all about data handling requirements and what we have to push down. We're largely a sub, so we get a lot of those requests to make sure that we're in sync with our primes. And it's a matter of every contract, every new award, the piece of business that we undertake, that the data handling requirements are clear and that they get fed out to the business units and down to make sure everything is handled consistently. So we rely heavily on those data handling requirements and to keep everything in order.
Yeah, just following up on what Ted says, the driver right now in the marketplace for CMMC compliance are the primes, not the Department of Defense. The primes are being pressured by the Department of Defense to, hey, is your supply chain secure? And the primes are pushing down or flowing down the requirements to their subcontractors.
Yeah, and Darius, that's a good segue into a question that's been out there for a while about MSPs, or, you know, as it's called in the rule, ESPs, external service providers, right? It's meant to lump all of your various managed providers into one boat. And the simple answer there is, just like you have to flow the rules down to your subs, your MSPs have to be at the same level you are. So if you're level 2 and you have an MSP, that MSP has to be level 2. And there has to be a responsibility matrix so that each party, yourself and that MSP, knows how everything's going to be handled. If there's a breach, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. You'll provide these logs, we'll do this, right? So all that has to be in place. So for small companies, and really, I don't think there's any company of any size that doesn't rely on an MSP. It needs to be there. And then you get into cloud providers, right? So that's your virtual machines, that's your storage. This is a non-managed provider, but operating in the cloud. They need to be FedRAMP moderate. And then there's a really recent memo, more recent than the new rule, that has everybody up in arms at the moment. But they say if they're not FedRAMP moderate, they can be FedRAMP equivalent. And they defined equivalence as meeting all FedRAMP moderate rules. Ironically, if you go get certified at FedRAMP moderate, you don't have to meet all the rules. But if you're equivalent, you then have to meet all the rules. So there's the debate in all this at the moment, and that has not been resolved.
I put up another poll too. Just wanted people to know. Go ahead, Darius.
One of the complications on the ESPs is that technically, if you follow the rule, is you cannot become CMMC certified until your MSPs are CMMC certified. So the MSPs have to become certified first until you can become MSP certified. And that requirement for the people who have gone through the joint surveillance, which is currently you can sign up for a DIPCAC to come and make you CMMC certified. They got like their CMMC quote unquote from the DIPCAC, but then this new rule has thrown a wrench onto that. So they're trying to figure this out. So.
And did you say, Steve, that the cloud service provider, a CSP, is included in that ESP category?
No, they are separate. So MSPs are your managed service providers, sometimes MSSP, managed security service providers. But that's the ESP, and they just expanded it to include any managed service. But cloud providers, you can go to Amazon and say, hey, I just want the ability to stand up virtual machines. I want the ability to have storage. It's something like that. You know, Amazon, it could be Microsoft. It doesn't matter who it is, but they're not offering you that managed service. You are taking care of the service yourself.
So the question we have, and I've got the poll up, you guys still, so answer this poll about, if you could, where do you need the most help in your journey? Don't know where to start. I need help with getting ready for an assessment. I need a C3 PAL, or I'm good. But we have a question, will cloud service providers need to meet the tier 2 or 3?
No, the cloud service provider have to meet the FedRAMP moderate requirements, which is a completely separate requirements. They are based on list 853, but they have 365 requirements that they have to meet.
Oh, wow.
So not 110. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
365 requirements. They have to be FedRAMP moderate. So a good example, Microsoft Government Cloud, Government Community Cloud, GCC High, AWS Gov Cloud is that. Ignite has a cloud that is FedRAMP compliant. There are various cloud service providers. You have, for example, Deltek has a FedRAMP moderate.
Got it.
Lots of those, Oracle now has a FedRAMP moderate. So lots of them. Atlassian, if you're using Jira, if you're using Confluence, there is a FedRAMP moderate Atlassian cloud that you can use.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll. I had 70%. I'm at 69. So just warning anyone.
While you're closing it, Christine, there's a question that's been out there for a while asking about their first score and uploads. Essentially, you need to update your SPURS score if there's any significant changes in your environment or annually at a minimum. So if you go acquire a new company and merge it in, you need to update it, even if you just did it 2 months ago. If you have a major overhaul of your ERP system, you're going to update your SPURS score, right? But if not, if your environment's been stable and you're doing just the normal day-to-day patching and maintenance, then annually to update your SPURS score as you go along. And back to something that Mark mentioned early on, make sure if you're looking to do that scoring that you are using NIST 800-171A or Alpha, the assessment guide. If you don't, you are likely missing key objectives and scoring yourself incorrectly. So just NIST 800-171A, that is your friend for this.
Okay. And where do you need the most help on your CMMC journey with the, number of over 150 attendees? We have 56% said they're good, 10% looking for the C3 PAL, and then there's a good 39% really, as you group them, that need help, get ready, or don't know where to start. I guess the first place I would say is go read that Federal Register and start educating yourself. Anything from anyone.
First thing, call Resnick.
Well, call us. Yes. Call us. Thank you for the plug, Darius. But Ted, where would you start out now if you had to do it all over again?
Well, I think it's two parts. I think from a technical standpoint, we start out with, a lot of our IT folks and just getting up to speed on the practitioner thing, just understanding what was going to be the requirements so they could understand levels and that. So that kind of gave everybody a kind of a level set. Then the experience of bringing in the resources, whether they're internally or external, they kind of have compliance and assessment background so that they kind of start getting set in a framework for your organization or the people that are going to be working with. They kind of put them in the right mindset. Obviously, from the legal side and the register side, understanding the content or the context of the requirements. But it's a little bit of each one of those. I think starts putting everybody level set and puts them in the kind of moving in the same direction, because that's the real key. Because of one of those earlier questions, to make sure everything is aligned from the top down means that you have to level set everybody.
Mark, I'll ask you the same question. If you had to start over again, or start with a brand new company, where would you start now that you know what you know?
So the first thing I would do is get your security and IT leadership in a conference room, put the 800-171 up on the big screen, and go line by line and see where you're already compliant, because you will have some of these things already taken care of. Even if you don't know it, you're going to be doing it, just because it's there. And then make yourself a gap assessment. So do a self gap assessment from the 800-171 to your current environment, and then figure out and come up with a plan between IT and security of, what do we have to do to meet each one of these controls? That's how we did it to begin with. So we did our gap assessment. We got in the room. We looked at the instruction. We said, okay, we meet these. These are the 100 or 90 or however many it was that we don't meet. How do we get there? So come up with different solutions, start getting quotes and things like that. And then when you get a certain way through the process, have a third-party assessor come in, not necessarily a C3PAO, but someone who can come in and do a gap assessment for you. Because, you can look at your own system all day and think, oh, I'm good there, or I'm good there. You get somebody that's not familiar with your network come in and have a new, fresh set of eyes, look at your environment and tell you where you're lacking, I think is one of the best things you can do.
Well, and the question I just put up, Mark, and you can see that, I think you also, like we had talked about, needing to know where your external service providers are, because like you said, Darius, they need to get certified first. So the question here is, do you know where they are in their compliance? So A is the answer of I haven't done that yet. So I would think those of you who really don't know, and need more help, you would maybe at that point, my ESP is working towards the CMMC level as your answer B, and then C is that the ESP is at the same level, or you don't know what the ESP is, the external service provider. Nobody answer that. Or maybe you didn't know until today what that ESP was, but let us know about that. Did Mark or Ted, did you have any concerns or issues with any of your ESPs where you got pushback or you had to switch?
No, I can assure you that every ESP knows about CMMC, and they know that their line of business depends upon them getting certified. So all of ours are well down the path towards certification. And, whether a CM or an ESP is in scope or not, it comes down to your scoping document. So there are scoping documents out there on the CMMC webpage that tells you what is in scope and what is not in scope for an assessment. So that's one of the things that you have to define as a company. Where does CUI flow within my environment? And that if it flows through this system, then that system is in scope for CMMC. So there will be parts of your environment that aren't in scope, that don't handle, touch, or process CUI. So those all have to be identified in your environment, but they might not have to be compliant with CMMC.
I agree, Mark. There's not anything to really add to that. I do believe that the scoping and where the CUI, the data flow of your CUI is important as well. But no, everybody that's a part of this business knows that that's a requirement. So I don't think there's been no pushback. Good.
Yeah, and I guess if you call up your ESP and they don't know what that is, then
you have a problem.
Time to look elsewhere.
there's a problem. We're at we've got this poll up, so we want people to get their certification. So while I'm leaving that up, the elephant in the room is a little bit about cost. And there's tons of analysis in this Federal Register, whether you argue it's good or bad, or they use good rates, or the amount of time to get things set up and continuing to be assessed. Steve, the question is, my understanding there will be significant cost to external CMMC assessments. How do you, I know, Darius, you mentioned a little bit about grants. How do you defer or diminish some of these costs for small business? What kind of advice do you give, Steve?
So the first advice I'd give, I'll say right now, you won't like. So I apologize to the crowd, but I talked about the fact that we're going from a 0 to 10 in that scale earlier of cyber, and the truth is most organizations should be at a 2, 3, or 4, somewhere in there already, and they're not. So it's a heavy lift. So that doesn't make it easy. It doesn't defer your cost, but what you need to stop thinking about this in terms of an added cost, but it is the cost to do business, and not just with the DoD, but it's the cost to do business with any of my customers, because I need to protect their data. I need to protect my information. So that's one. And I get nobody's going to like that answer, but that's the reality. Two, start taking a hard look at how you operate. Start taking a hard look at your business, your processes, and what you do. You'll probably find, and this is true in most businesses, you duplicate a lot of things. You did things one way because, well, 3 years ago, that was easier. We didn't have enough staff, or the technology was different. And so take a hard look at those things. Also, something else to consider. Hasn't been talked about as much in the last year, and we didn't get on it at all today. There is something called enclaving, where you can say, I will only do DoD work in this space, this physical and logical space. Sometimes in some organizations that can be cheaper. We can limit our systems and we can do it. In other businesses, you are truly better off to do it across your whole business. But that's an analysis you need to look at, understand.
Okay.
And that's critical. And then, go ahead, Christy.
Well, no, I just wanted to let you look at the results here. 40% said they haven't worked with their ESP yet. So that's a big number with the folks that are on here. And we do have one more polling, so I'll get to that.
Surprised.
Well, okay, you're not? Okay, all right.
No, because they haven't considered it, right? They know a sub and a flow down, but they're not thinking laterally.
Okay.
So it's part of that mindset change.
Right. Yeah, no, it's for me too. So just these next two slides are just a little bit about, if you'd like more information, please go to our GovCon 360 site on the Cohen-Resnick site. And we are having some fireside chats about getting ready for CMMC, and I'm sure Darius and Steve are managing these on February 1st. Lessons learned and latest updates. So about 15 days from now, March 7th, the current state. So we'll have seen a lot of the responses and the comments.
And DFAR's rewrite
starting. And then April 4th, community determined, so a future topic on this. So we just have this one last question for those to ask about, if, in order for us to help you and provide you further insights, we'd love for you to tell us if you would like more information on today's topic. The second item could be another topic. I mentioned business systems. We're heavily involved in that compliance as well. You have an immediate need, something very pressing that you need us to talk to you about, we'll get with you right away. Or you don't need further insights at this time, but we really appreciate you guys being here. It is just, we just have a minute, and I just want to thank Mark. Wonderful analysis on subs and what you've done there at MTSI. We really appreciate that. Ted, your journey and your explanations with your leadership. We can't thank either one of you enough for participating with us. It's so important that the community of government contracting, hear from other government contractors who have done it and, believe in it and see the benefits of it, even though we know there's a cost and there's time, but we are spending taxpayers' money. So we really appreciate you, Mark, and thank you for being here, and Ted.
It's a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christine.
Good.
Appreciate the time,
Great.
and definitely appreciate the Cohen-Resnick and MTSI relationship.
Yeah, same here. So let us know if you need anything else from us, Steve or Darius.
Yeah,
anything?
real quickly, Christine,
Sure.
from our technical support folks, apparently there is an issue with CPE certification, the certificate you're trying to download. And if you're not getting them, they're saying they will send them out after the webinar manually. So just want everyone to know that they're aware that whatever's going on is going on.
Yeah, because we are giving CPE. We always do. We always give CPE. So Thanks for letting us know. Thank you all. Our next Lunch and Learn is in February. Look for the link to that. You know, we do them once a month, so we'll be sending that out. And we just want to thank you all for being here. And have a great day and good luck in your CMMC journey. All right, take care.